Okay, so this is recording. So this is a really quick video, or hopefully really quick, where I'm going to summarize all the things you need to do to fill in the checkpoint report. There is a much longer video where I've literally just recorded myself for an hour and a half, kind of trying to figure it out, and you can watch that if you want and see all the examples, but you can also just look at my completed example here. So I've got when you've done part A, which is your Gantt chart and your PID, that's a 3-hour exam. You'll then have another 2-hour exam to do the checkpoint report. In this, you will have to fill out a checkpoint report, and you'll also have to fill out an email, and you'll be given this scenario. Oh, I've already got that open. You won't get part A, but you will get part B. Easily, because you have to do part B. Part B is involved checkpoint report and then an activity email. Activity email will be another video, but this checkpoint report you'll get is basically this scenario here. So here we get 4, not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 different things that have gone wrong or caused delays, such as supply problems of network infrastructure. That caused a 5-day delay, a 10% increase in infrastructure costs. The check-in part of the new system failed, so we needed further testing, 5-day delay. Issue and transferring data, a 4-day delay. Incorrect security controls, 7 days. So you have these things that have gone wrong in your project. Now, one thing you will have is everything you created in part A exam. So you will have your PID and you also have your Gantt chart as well. So I'd recommend opening up those and where you need to figure out extra time or extra dates, using the Gantt chart to add on the extra dates for you. If, for example, if you want to add on a 5-day delay to the network infrastructure task, then it will do it automatically for you. But you also have like a blank checkpoint report like this. Well, this is my filled in one, but you'll get a blank one, and I'll put the one in the and when you fill that in, the first things you have to fill in are, so if I just come over here, make that bit bigger. So the first things you've got to fill in are the checkpoint date. So you could imagine that that's possibly, well, I put the beginning. To be honest, it's up to you really. When is the checkpoint going to happen? It's probably going to happen in the middle of the project. So it starts on the 2nd. It's going to start on the 3rd of the 3rd, so halfway through, because it finishes on the 4th of the 3rd. Right, so imagine your checkpoint report must happen somewhere in the middle. It's a checkpoint, things have gone wrong, right? These things you fill in, document details, approvals, distribution, they are exactly the same things you had to fill in for the PID. So you can copy and paste those over, right? It's a copy and paste job there. And again, you're just saying who's going to approve it, the senior directors, who's going to distribute to the senior directors. You'd want your date of the checkpoint report to match that. So make sure that it makes sense, you know, like I've put the 3rd of the 1st and the 3rd of the 2nd, but now I'm going to update that so it says the 3rd of the 3rd. All thread going through your reports, and it's not really that important. That should take you a minute or 2 to fill in, you know, just copy and paste it over. The next thing you've got to do is the products. The products come from the list of deliverables, basically. So let's go back to your PID. So you, as I said, you won't have part A scenario to look at again. So everything that you've got to infer and bring into your part B checkpoint needs to come from your PID. So we're going to go and look at the deliverables. It was one of the smart targets and then deliverables near the end. The deliverables are the things that you need to deliver to make the system work. These things here, the deliverables. So you've got to, I put each of the deliverables in there. And then I said, then you've got to say what things have been undertaken and what progress has been made. So, for example, with the relational database, the database has been made, but according to this checkpoint report, there was an issue transferring data from the old system to the new system. You can actually just copy this issue over and paste it into here. So you can say something like the database has been made and then paste in the issue that was found in the checkpoint. Then you've got to say how much of a delay this caused. Well, it was 4 days. The delay caused that to go forward 4 days. So this is where we also look identify which activity this is going to affect. So you could do that by looking at your smart targets or by looking at your Gantt charts. Let's see if we can open up the Gantt chart. I'll just open that up here. There we go. So I think that this relational database is going to affect the integrating the smartphone app and relational database task. Therefore, if you think you need to add extra time to it, well, it says you have to add extra 4 days, add extra 4 days to this, which I'm not sure that I did here. So if we add that in now, you might get clashes, right? Now, you need to remember what these clashes are because you have to write about these a little bit later on. But if you do get a clash, like here, because this needs to start when this is finished, I just deleted the predecessor column and then re-entered it and it fixed it. Now, that will shift timelines and things like kind of further along, and that's the point. This checkpoint report has these issues and it's going to come up with these problems and it's going to shift schedules, right? And then highlight the issue and then say what delay it caused. And do this with each of these deliverables: customized smartphone app, network infrastructure. Network infrastructure, so let's look at these. How much would that cost? Well, go look at your PID, look at the materials section. I think it was near to the end, possibly. Or just before smart targets, network infrastructure was 25,000. Now it's going to be 10% more. That's 2,500 more, 27,500. So you've got to say again, say what work has been done. Well, the highlight, just you could copy that issue in there and maybe say that it was installed, but then this issue came up. Say how much that delay, that 5-day delay, will take your schedule onto, and then say how much the 10% increase in cost. Other issues were, well, customized interface of the database was fine. Other issues were upgrade check-in desks. So the check-in part of the new system failed during the first testing stage due to the system overloading. So that would affect this upgrade check-in desk task. So installing of the check-in desks. So you need to add extra time perhaps onto that one. We have, of course, accounted 22 extra days for major and minor faults. Now, you may not need to add on extra time if you don't think that that makes sense. Because if you've accounted 22 extra days and you count the number of days of faults here, 5, 10, 14, 7 plus 14 is 21. So actually, if we've accounted 22 extra days for major and minor faults, all these extra delays shouldn't necessarily push the task any further ahead, because we've kind of factored in that things like this might go wrong. Like for this testing task here, perhaps a delay to delivery. For example, supply problems with the network infrastructure, perhaps that may push things slightly further on. That's not something that is a major or a minor fault. So we would need to increase the time there for that. The check-in part of the system failed. Well, that is covered by the testing. There was an issue transferring data. So which task would issue transferring data affect? Probably going to affect integrating the smartphone app, because that is integrating the database, and smartphone app's going to push it forward. Well, it says another 4 days, but we've already accounted for that in our testing. So you just need to say here, whether or not that is we've accounted for that already. Incorrect security controls, well, that could be another fault. So, and that's going to push it forward by 7 days. What task might that affect? Well, I wasn't quite sure, but I assumed that maybe planning and deliver training for staff may be affected by that because they couldn't use the system correctly. So we're going to have to add another 7 days perhaps onto that. So it's up to you as a project manager to decide which ones you've already included in this extra testing time and which ones you haven't. And you have to say in this product table what work's been done on it. If there's an issue with that specific deliverable, say what the issue is, and then say what the end date would be for that. Next section, quality management. So this is really similar to the project management and control that I went into quite a lot of detail here in the PID. So I actually copied these things and pasted it in here, and then added some extra things to make it more relevant to this checkpoint. So what things am I talking about in quality management? Well, all the things you did as a project manager to make things run within budget, time, and quality, good quality. Talk about how maybe you spread the work out between engineers, how you build redundancy in the system by ordering extra servers. How did you build in extra testing time, and why was this a good idea, especially when you're referring to such as testing and failure of systems? Why was that a good issue? It meant that there were 21 extra days that we needed because of faults, but we'd already factored in 22. How did your communication plan help? So these are all the points you've got to hit. And while I'm talking about points you've got to hit, I've also included in this folder other people's who actually done an exam in this, examples for different scenarios. But if you look through this one, and so there's one by, I've changed the names, Mohammed, and one by Joe Blogs. If you look through Joe Blogs and Mohammed's past paper example, that I think it's an actual exam they did this in the actual exam, you can see all the things that they said that in quality management and control, and you can read that as an example as well as mine. But so I've just copied my project management and control thing over, and the only thing I've added in here, the extra things I've added in here is did I say something in relation to the checkpoint? Yes, I did. I said 21 days extra, and that accounted for some of the issues. Also, how talking to different engineers and people may have helped to issues, such as in this checkpoint. Also, how considering risks are really important. Like, I tried to consider as many risks as I can, but I don't think I managed to cover all the risks that they've found in this checkpoint report. Okay, so the next thing you've got to fill in is work package tolerance. In here, you've got to say when the project was meant to finish for time and when it actually did finish, and make a brief summary of why it went on a bit more. So I figured my project went on a bit more because I put multiple engineers. I should have done. I'm not sure if this is the right one, but I put multiple engineers on the same task. So that meant that I could cut down the length of time it took to do a specific task. But adding in that extra testing time pushed the pushed the end date over than when it was actually meant to finish. Cost is just, did you stay within budget? If you've got a valid reason, you know, if there is there's a certain tolerance level, you can go over 5 or 10%, then say that there. Quality, right? So how did you keep quality high? Well, by doing the extra testing, we certainly tried to keep it high. Next, really important things you've got to fill in. So that should be pretty easy. That could be almost a copy and paste from your project management control. List all these 4 issues, and I've literally copied and pasted, say, this one for supply problems with network infrastructure. I copied that in and I pasted it in there as a description. And then I cut out that bit of text here. This caused a delay of 5-day delay and 10% increase in infrastructure cost. I pasted that in there. You could then say, so it cost 27,500, right? And then I put the date at which, if it's going to be pushed forward, because we haven't considered that issue, how many days it's going to be pushed forward by, when it's going to finish. I also put who it was raised by. So someone who could work on network infrastructure, again, which you can find out from your PID, because you would have listed under responsibilities all the people who could do those tasks, right? Who it's going to be raised by and at what day. Okay, and you've got to do this for every single issue here. Say what the issue is, what action was taken, 5 more days of testing, or is there an increase in cost or whatever, and when, and if it's going to push the finish date forward for that task, when's it going to be pushed forward by, right? That's really important. Okay, lessons learned. So this is the last bit that you've got to fill in, but really important. What you've got to do here, I put it in bullet points for you in bold, right? You need to highlight all the issue raised. So what I did was I talked about all the issues that were raised in here. Then and I've done it in bullet point form, and I think that's okay because it's in proper sentences and paragraphs. You've got to say what the end date was, considering what the checkpoint report says about the issue. So how much it got pushed forward by, how much the cost was increased by. You've then got to say, discuss whether or not you considered it in your risk analysis. So you remember at the end in your PID before here, you did a risk analysis, constraints and assumptions. Did you think about that issue that came up in your checkpoint report? If not, why not? And what would you do in future to make sure that you had kind of considered that issue? But you also need to say, what kind of severity would it be? So remember we had this table here. So I did actually consider this first risk about supply chains. I said here, equipment's not delivered on time, but I thought the probability was low, 1, but the impact was 3, which is quite high, but the severity therefore was 3. So maybe you want to discuss the severity, probability, and the impact, and those combinations, and how much of an issue it could be, and what things you might do to protect against it in future. Again, here I wrote that out, so I could copy that from my PID, which you will have access to. You will have access to all the things you've done before. This is why it's really good, important to write a good PID, because it will help you write a good checkpoint and the rest of the exam. Yeah, so you've got a bullet point issue list, all the issues, how it pushed the dates out, whether you'd considered it, what the risk factor were, and do that for every single one of these. And the last thing that you have to do is discuss your communication plan and say what you learned from having a really good plan, a communication plan with people, i.e. by communicating with your dev team every day, you found about issues they had, the senior developers, you found out about issues that the senior developers had with junior developers, and maybe communicating with senior management and the client, not too much to harass them, but enough to keep them informed, meant they were able to give their input and feedback. So and anything else you can think about, lessons learned that are maybe related to these, but more lessons learned that you could imagine that are related to these specific checkpoint scenarios. What things can you learn from these things coming up? And that to fill in your checkpoint report. And everything I've been talking about here, this filled in checkpoint report that I did is here. This part B scenario here is here. And these two example checkpoint reports are here. And here's also a very, very long video of me, about 1.5 hours, just filling it in, trying to figure it out. And if you really need to go through that and watch it, you can. Okay.